Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Today we are going to talk about the basics of Construct 3. And this is not going to be a super polished video. I just want to show you some of the things that you'll need to know when working with Construct. So first of all, how do we find it? Well, if you go to Google and search for Construct 3, it will actually be the first hit, Construct 3 Game Making Software. Now, when you land on that page, you need to click in the upper right corner to log on to your account. And you'll use the same username and password that you set up just the other day. Click on the Remember Me button in a desperate attempt to make it remember you, but I hate to tell you this, it's going to forget you all the time. I have no idea why, but sometimes you just have to keep logging on again and again. There's lots of stuff that you can find on the Construct site that's very useful. In particular, the Learn tab has really excellent documentation. It gets better every year. But for now, we're going to focus on Launch Construct 3. Now, that will bring up the basic interface, which is sort of the equivalent of the new file window you see in Adobe Animate or Adobe Photoshop. So you can see here that there's a start page. It allows you to create a new project. It shows you some examples of game demos. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a bit. And also in the upper right-hand corner, it shows you that you're logged on. Now, if you don't see your username and a little icon there in the upper right-hand corner, you might need to log on again a second time. So I want to also show you something else, which is that on my desktop, I have downloaded the same source file assets that you'll be using in this first module. And so they're all in a zip file that is on tlearn, and you can see these are the assets. Let me just sort of show you what they are. We've got this PNG file of a stone tile background. We've got a coin, we've got a crate, we've got Mario. Okay, it's not really Mario, he's Mario-like. We have a monster, and then we have these victory messages and defeat messages. And these are all stored in separate PNG files. So we're gonna be using these in just a second. But first, what we're gonna do is set up a new project in Construct. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Video Demo Dungeon Cleanup. You should give it a better name. And then preset size, we're going to keep this viewport size. For me, it's defaulting to 854 by 480, and that's perfect. And we're not going to optimize for pixel art. We'll just go ahead and click on Create. And now, it gives us the empty construct, or the blank beginning construct page. I'm going to talk more about everything on here in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about how you're going to save your files. You're going to go to the menu and go to Project and select Save As, and you're going to save it using a cloud save. Now, in the past, we used to do this with Dropbox in the lab upstairs, but what I would like you to do is actually connect to your personal Google account, your Google Drive account, using your Trinity credentials, and you should set up a folder for yourself that is called Your Name Games Class. And if you begin it with the numbers 0, it'll always appear at the top of everything when you connect to Google Drive, which is going to save you tons of time. And then once you have created that folder, you should double click on it, and you're going to save your file inside that folder. So I'm going to save my file, Video Demo Dungeon Cleanup C3P, right here. It's now being saved in Google Drive, which is pretty cool. So all of this is happening in the cloud. I'm going to be doing all the coding in the cloud using the web-based Construct 3 program, and I'm going to be saving my files to a Google Drive folder in the cloud. Okay, so at first glance, you might notice that this looks a lot like the Adobe Animate layout in certain crucial ways. So for example, we have here an area that is very much like the stage, that main area where we construct our scenes in Adobe Animate. We have a project window that shows all of the assets and images and sounds and things that we've uploaded. We have layers, just as we have layers in Adobe Animate. There's actually a timeline as well, but we're not going to get into that right now. But I would like to start out by showing you that there's both the viewport and there's the layout. And so the viewport is what the user is going to see on the screen. And you can see that's indicated here by these dotted lines. Your layout can be much bigger than your viewport, kind of like we had, backgrounds that were much bigger than the stage when we wanted to have scrolling animated backgrounds in Adobe Animate. But in our case right now, what we're going to do is make sure that the layout for this game and the viewport are the same size. And so to do that, I'm going to start by clicking here and looking at the layout properties, and where it says size, I'm going to actually change the size of the layout so it's 854 by 480, which is exactly the same size as the viewport. And just let me go back for a second. Notice how before this was much bigger, right? The background, the layout was 1708 by 960, but I'm going to change that and make it 854 by 480, and then it's going to be the same size as the viewport. Now the next thing I want to show you is that you can also set your project properties, and this is where you put in information about like your game. Let's see, this is going to be called Dungeon Cleanup Video Tutorial. Version 1.00, you can put in an explanation, beginning game. ID will be edu dot Delwich Trinity, dungeon author Aaron Delwich, email, and website as if that were relevant. Okay, so I've sort of set up the project properties now. I also have just this layout. The next thing that I'm going to do is go ahead and save my file again, just to save my changes, because Construct will crash. And now I'm going to start creating my layers. So over here, you can see my layers. I've got layer 0, and I'm going to rename that and call it background layer. And I'm going to right-click, add a layer at the top. I'll rename that, and I'm going to call that let's see, I think I will call that main. And so the background is obviously going to hold my game background. The main is where all my characters and possibly monsters and opponents will be moving around. And then I'm going to add one last layer. I'm going to call that UI, which is short for user interface. And that's where sort of the screen information like the score or any sort of buttons the user needs to interact to control the game, that's where that will be located. Okay. So now I have those layers. The next thing I'm going to do is highlight the background layer, and we are going to import our background. And so the way that I'm going to do this is kind of move my mouse so I'm on top of that main layout area. I'm going to right-click and select Insert New Object. And then it's going to say, okay, what kind of object do you want? And I'm going to scroll down until I see the option, which is Tiled Background. And sometimes I go too fast, I can't find it. You know, you can always just start to search, and in that it'll just automatically show you the option that applies. So I want the tiled background, and you'll notice that it says, okay, tiled background is a faster way of inserting backgrounds than using sprites. I can give it a name, and I'm going to be really strict about my naming conventions. I'm going to call this BG Stone, because it's like a stone background. All of my background files will begin with BG. Now I'm going to click on Insert. And then notice how I have these crosshairs now. I'm just going to click anywhere on the stage, and it's going to ask me, okay, where do you want to get this image for your tiled background? Now it's given me the option. I could try to create it here using its really rudimentary drawing tools. If you were not thrilled with the tools in Animate, or if you wanted them to do more, you're definitely not going to love the drawing tools that are built into Construct. That is not one of its key features. But luckily, Construct will allow me to open up any file and import it. So I'm going to click on that folder icon right there. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go find the Dungeon Cleanup assets and look for BG Stone Tile and click on Open. And you can see that's going to open it up right there. Now, if I X out of this, I have this little thing right here, BG Stone, which is my tiled background. And so what I'm going to do is actually change the position now and position it so it's at 0, 0. That's the upper left coordinates. This is just like what we used to do in Animate all the time. And I'm going to change the size and stretch it so it's 854 times by 480. And because it's a tiling background, it'll automatically tile it. It won't actually distort the pattern. Okay, cool. I've got a nice little dungeon background here. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer. And now I'm going to go to the main layer. Now, I'm going to show you two ways that you can import sprites into your game. And if you're wondering what is a sprite, a good way of thinking of a sprite is just like an object that moves around or that you can interact with in your game. It can be animated. It's not necessarily animated. Sprites kind of become a catch-all term that we use sometimes to describe these little units in games. But I think that the definition of sprite will become more clear just kind of through application as we continue to use them. So there is this file right here called objectmario.png, and I'm going to show you the one way to import it, and then I'm going to show you a second way. So the first way to import it is to go into your game, right-click, making sure you're on the layer where you want to be. You right-click on the main layout, and you say Insert New Object. And this time, I'm going to look for Sprite. And that's the option. And I know that this is going to be my Mario character, so I'm going to start all of my sprite objects with obj, and I'm going to call it Mario. And insert. And then again, I get the crosshairs. I can click anywhere on the layout. It's going to give me this window that says, okay, do you want to draw Mario here using our animations editor? To which my answer is an emphatic no way, dude. Instead, I'm going to go and click on that folder icon. I'm going to go find Object Mario and click on Open. And there you can see he's right there in the center of my layout. And now I will X out, and he is sitting there on the stage. Okay, cool. You'll notice also he showed up over here in my list of project assets. And as with Animate, you can have multiple instances of a single symbol or object or sprite. So if I wanted to have 4 Marios running around on the stage, I could. But nope, I just want 1 Mario, so I will delete those. Okay, so that is one way of getting an asset in. But there's another way as well. Let me bring my folder back up here, and I'll show you the other way. The other thing you can do, let me turn this into a list of items. The other thing you could do is just drag them in one at a time. So I'm just going to drag in object coin, and notice how it automatically keeps the naming convention since I already named it the correct way in my file manager. When I drag it in, it just takes that name. So I've got object coin, object crate, and I want object monster as well. And those are my sprites. Now, you might be wondering, well, what would happen, Delwich, if I grabbed all of these and grabbed them and dragged them at once? It's kind of cool. Actually, it would take all of them and stack them on top of each other as individual frames inside of a single sprite, but we'll talk about that later. For now, all you need to know is that this is how you move your assets in one at a time. I also have these other messages, game over and UI victory. I'm going to go ahead and drag those in as well. Oh, I got UI defeat. Oh, I just ruined it. I dragged them in at the same time. So that's not what I wanted to do. It actually took 2 in. I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to go and delete. And as I said, this is not the most polished video today. I'm going to do them now one at a time. There goes UI defeat. I've got my UI message there. And let me do UI victory as well. Okay, so now I'm going to hit save again, or Command S or Control S just to quickly save. I'm also going to zoom out a little bit, and you can see when I zoom out that all of those things I just dragged in were actually, oops, let me undo that. They were actually hanging out there off the stage. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and delete them and get them off the stage. They're still over here for me to play with and do stuff with, but I just didn't want them on the stage right now. Okay, so far so good. These UI defeat things, though, I actually want to put them on the UI layer and not the main layer. So I'm going to drag UI victory out, just plop it right here on the stage. I'm going to also drag UI defeat out. And this is something that happened in Animate. In fact, I think somebody was mentioning it in their presentations just a couple days ago on Friday, that sometimes objects would end up on the wrong layer. Luckily, that's really easy to fix in Construct. You can just find your object, you can right-click on it, and then if you look at the Z order, one of your options is to send it to a different layer. I'm going to send this to the UI layer. I'm going to do that also with the Game Over UI message. I'll go to Z order, move to layer UI. And now both of these things are actually on the UI layer. And you can tell this because it's got a little 2 after it. That means I have 2 things on that layer. And down here, there's just 1 thing on the main layer. Okay, so right here are my, oops, I don't want to do that, my 2 little error messages hanging out on the stage. Now, if I started my game right now, what you would see is that I would have Mario, or with the person we're calling Mario, in the lower left corner, and I would have my error messages, which are contradictory. You win, game over. But that's, I guess it's not totally contradictory, but still, it's not what we want. So let me X out of this. These messages, I'm going to leave them on the stage, but I'm not going to actually show them to the user until after the game has ended. And so what I can do is, just as with Adobe Animate, we could click on an object and look at properties. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to click on the you win message. I'm going to look over at the properties of that and see that it's initially visible. That means when the game starts, it's going to be something that players can see. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to do the same thing with game over, highlight that and make it so it's no longer initially visible. Now I'll just go ahead and save my file. And now if I test the game, you'll see, even though those things are there on the stage, they're invisible, so the user can't see them. That's what I want for now. Okay, pretty cool. Okay, so I've got my character on the stage. I've got my little error messages there on the stage. And it's time to talk about how we actually get some code going in here. Let me show you something really cool here. This is the event sheet. This is where we're going to be writing our code. So the event sheet kind of keeps track of all of the objects that are on the stage and things that we want to have happen. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the event sheet in just a second. Let me go out to the main layout though, and just point out that we do have this main guy here, Mario. Let me get zoomed in again. I realized I'm zoomed out a bit. He's sitting here in the bottom left corner of our stage. And let me show you something kind of cool. I'm going to click on this object, Object Mario, and you can see here, I'm on the main layer, I've got Object Mario selected, and I want to add a behavior to Mario. A behavior is something that's built in that allows us to apply special properties to that object. It's kind of like the methods that we had in Code Combat. So I have Mario right here. I'm going to click on Behaviors, Add Edit. I'll add a new behavior, and you can see all of these different behaviors. And once you start playing with these, I think you're going to be really excited about playing around with all of the possibilities that are built in. But for now, I'm going to select the 8-direction behavior. And you can see for all of these behaviors, whenever you select one, it'll give you an explanation right here of what it does. So I'm selecting 8-direction, and it's telling me this will move an object up, down, left, and right on a diagonal. That sounds kind of cool. I'll click Add, and that behavior has now been applied to my Object Mario right here. So now when I test my game, what I can do is use those arrow keys, and I can move Mario in all 8 directions. I don't need to write loads and loads of code to do this. It's just a behavior that's been pre-scripted and built in. And that's one of the great things about Construct is it takes a lot of these things that are just kind of necessary in almost any game you can imagine, like basic movement controls. Instead of forcing us to reinvent the wheel, it gives us this behavior that we can access and then modify as well. Okay, so I've set up this right now, and the next thing I want to have is I want to add some coins that Mario can collect. And I want to make sure that when he collects all the coins, we'll see a victory error message. So I'm going to drag one of these coins out onto the stage, and then I'm going to show you a shortcut. I could just keep dragging coins out onto the stage, but the other shortcut is I'm going to hold down the Control key and drag, actually let me, the Command key on a Mac, and drag Control on Windows, and you can see that just I can click drag to make a duplicate of the object, or I can just drag multiple objects out from the stage. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's make it, 8's a lucky number in much of the world. So let's keep those 8 coins out on the stage, and let's test our game. Okay, so Mario's moving around, and uh-oh. For one thing, he's underneath the coins, which is kind of weird. That's because I added them last, and they have a higher, like in the Z order, they're actually on top of him. But also, we haven't given it any code. We haven't told the computer what we want to do when there's a collision between Mario and the coin. And so that's where the code comes in. So let me hop over here to this event sheet. So right now, this is an empty event sheet. And the thing is, it will allow us to add events based on objects that are part of our game. And so what I'm going to do is add an event, and I'm going to base this event on the Mario object. So I'm going to click this object to select a new condition from, and I'll say next. And it says, okay, there's all of these things you can do when you're using this Mario object. What do you want to do? And I'm going to scroll down and just sort of look really quickly to show you all of these different properties that we can use, things to play around with. It might feel overwhelming at first, but I, again, want to reiterate, as this starts to come into focus, and I think it's going to come into focus a lot quicker than Adobe Animate, you're going to just realize how much power there is built in here with these pre-scripted conditions and events. But the event I'm looking for right now is collision with another object. So what I want to do is that I want to check and say, every time Mario collides with the coin object, I'm going to test for a collision with the coin object, then I want to do something. So what I just said is every time Mario collides with the coin, I want to do some sort of action. And the action that I want to have is I would actually like to just get rid of that coin. And so it says create a new object to get a new action from, or pick an object to create a new action from. I'm going to pick object coin. I'm going to scroll down and look for the option, which is destroy. And the destroy option will destroy that object. So now it's telling me if object Mario collides with the coin, destroy the coin. And I'm going to actually go ahead, now that you've seen this, I'm going to delete this whole line and do it again, just so you can see how I did it. Let me delete that. What I want to do is set it up so that whenever object Mario collides with the coin, it destroys the coin. So I'm going to start by selecting object Mario. I'm going to create a condition from that, and the condition I'm looking for is on collision with another object. And the object I'm interested in checking the collision detection for is object coin. If I say done, that gives me the first half of my event sheet. When object Mario collides with the coin, I'm going to do something. Then I'm going to click on action, and this time I'm going to say the action is linked to this object, object coin, and I would like to tell it to destroy the coin. And now this is the first line of code that I've added to my event sheet. An interesting thing to know about the event sheet is that it will fire 60 times a second. So 60 times a second, Construct 3's compiler or interpreter is going to run through and try to do every single thing on this event sheet 60 times a second. And so 60 times a second, it's going to be checking to see, is Mario colliding with a coin? If so, destroy the coin. So let me go back here and hit play. And now I'm going to move Mario and start, oh, look at that. It's taking the coins and picking them up. So now I can get all my coins, and then the game will sort of be over. You know, isn't it kind of weird, this like little spinny thing? I want to change that behavior. So let me change that before I win the game here. I'm going to go back to my layout and select Object Mario and take a look at my properties for this 8-direction behavior. You know, I can check my speed, my acceleration, my deacceleration. I can change the number of directions. Do I want 8 or 4? But what I'm going to say is no smooth angles. I just want 90-degree intervals. And now, if I test my game, you'll see that it's a little different. It's changing, it's letting me move kind of, but only at 90-degree intervals. And, you know, that feels a little more normal. It's still kind of weird, but that works. Okay. All right, so I've changed my behavior to display a little differently, picked up all the coins, but nothing is happening. And that's because the game has no idea that the game is over. So we need to put in a victory condition. And so I'm going to go back to my event sheet here. I'm going to add another event. And this next event, I just want to have it checking to see, do we have any coins left? And so to do that, I'm going to use what's called a system event. So let me click on event, and you'll see that we have options to create events linked to objects, but we also have something called the system object. And the system object basically contains all of this different information about our game, about it's not just about the objects themselves, it's kind of about anything else that's sort of like bigger or more meta connected to our game and the interacted moving components. And you'll be using system events a lot. So I'm going to select the system event. And what I want to do now is I'm going to compare two values. And so what I want to check is to see how many coins are left. And if the number of coins left is 0, then the game is over. So I'm going to select compare two values, next. And here we're going to get something which is our sort of event or a comparison of value window. And it says, okay, first value equal to second value. And it allows us to set up the comparison we want to check for. But what we're going to do is say, if the number of coins on the screen remaining is equal to 0, then we want to end the game. And so if we were allowed to type in normal English commands here, we'd say, if the number of commands, we're not, if number of, yeah, see, it's not even letting me. I was going to try to do that. I thought that would be kind of cool. It won't. But just imagine if I could type in there, if number of coins remaining equal to 0, end game. But I can't type that. So what I'm going to do is use what's called the expressions dictionary. And this is really cool. You click on find expressions. It'll bring up this window. Sometimes you have to hunt around for it. And it shows you all of the objects that you have in your game so far. And then you can click one of these objects and it shows you, or double click, and it shows you all of the different aspects of the object that you can look at. And this is kind of like the object properties we talked about in Code Combat. So for example, I could find out exactly the current color of that coin, that particular coin. I could find out if it was opaque or transparent. I could find out its XY coordinates. I could find out all sorts of things. I could find out what angle it's at. I could find out the height and the width. Okay, you get the point. There's a ton of things. But what I really want to find out is just how many are remaining on the stage. And so it's called count. Get the total number of instances of this object type. That's what I want. So I'm going to double click here. Now look what happened down here in our comparison window. It says, okay, objectCoin.count. So if objectCoin.count is equal to 0, the game is going to end. And that notation may look very familiar to you because it's exactly what it looked like in Code Combat. ObjectCoin.count was sort of like, hero.health. It's the count property of ObjectCoin. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Done. And now you can see we have the first half of our line of code in this event sheet. So it's going to check to see 60 times a second if the number of coins left is 0. And if it's 0, it's going to do something. And so what do we want it to do? Well, what we want it to do is show the victory message, which is you win. So what I'm going to say here is add action, and then the object I want to take the action from is going to be UI victory. Select that, and then you can see there are lots of different options here that I could choose, but what I want is set visible. And so I'll double click on that, and you can see I can choose if I want to make the object invisible or visible. I'll say I want to make it visible. Because remember, that victory message is sitting there on our stage. Right now, it's like right there, you win, but the user can't see it. We know it's there. So what this says is 60 times a second, it's going to check to see if Mario's colliding with a coin. If he is, destroy the coin. And then 60 times a second, check to see how many coins are left. If there are only 0 coins left, then say, you won. Okay, let's save this and test our game. All right. So now, as you can see, this is all working. What happens if I get up here and get the... Oh, there you go. You win. Oh, now this is weird, though. Notice how Mario is still running around all over the place. That seems kind of strange. We could do a number of things if we wanted. We could get rid of him, or we could stop him from moving. Let's try that. Let's see. Let's put an action here. And so we'll say, in addition to making the victory message visible, I'm going to say, once this happens, let's go to Object Mario, and let's see, I can make him invisible. And now hit Done. And so what'll happen now when the game is over is that we'll get to see the victory message, and Mario himself will become invisible, which is probably not the best way to handle this, because technically he's still running around there on the stage using up computer resources. We can't see it, but that does kind of work. You might think, well, couldn't we just destroy him? Well, yeah, sure, we could. Let me delete that, and I'll go to Add Action, Object Mario, and we could also say destroy, and it would do the same thing. It would just destroy Mario. But maybe that's not what we want. Maybe we want something a little more dramatic. So I could say Object Mario, and instead of destroying him, I would like to make him really huge. And so I would like to set his scale to be double size. And let's see what happens now. Okay, let's go pick up all our coins. I guess I could have put them all out there in an easier place to gather. See how he just got really big? I mean, that's kind of cool. You get the basic idea. So coding in Construct is going to take place in your event sheet. It's visual, it's intuitive. A lot of the stuff that you have to do all the time is kind of built in for you, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. But this is still programming, and we're still going to be thinking about all those core concepts that we were starting to play around with in Code Combat. Now, one really important concept that we talked about in Code Combat, and you're going to hear me belaboring a ton during the remaining month and a half, is the importance of comments. And so to insert a comment in Construct, what you can do is highlight a line and then hit Q for, I don't know what Q stands for, why it stands for comment. Comment? I don't know, but let's just pretend it makes sense. Hit Q to add a comment, and then you can say, if Mario collides with coin, destroy the coin. And then here I'll add another comment, check to see how many coins are left. if no coins, player wins. And you might notice that your comments seem kind of redundant because also a lot of this is implicit in the code itself, but it's always good to be in a habit of adding these comments. Okay, so that is the first part of how you do this. The last thing I want to show you really quickly is the concept for how you would export your game. To do that, you would go to Project and you select Export. And you have different options. One of them is Web HTML5, and that is the option you should choose. Publish the game to be run in a browser. Click Next, and it will give you a few options like deduplicating images or recompressing them or minifying them. For now, you can leave all of those options empty and just click on Next. And it takes a second, and it says, OK, export finished. Download this zip file. And you can download the zip file to wherever you want on your computer. For now, I'll just put it on my desktop. And it's going to save it as dungeon cleanup video tutorial.zip. And let me just show you, too, what this is going to look like. If I go to my Finder now, you'll see I have this zip file here. And I'm going to uncompress it. By double clicking on it, you can see this is what a construct game looks like once we've published it. It's going to have a folder that contains the images that we started with. And you can see that it's going to put some of these things on a shared sprite sheet. So like all of the different things we have in our game are there on a single file to make it easier to work with. It's going to have the code that we created in event sheets is going to be turned into JavaScript that runs in the script folder and these icons. You don't really need to worry about those contents for now, but what you do need to know is that when you publish your game, it's going to create a zip file. And then the next thing that you do is you double click on it, and that will export it and uncompress the folder. Then what you do is you go to FileZilla, and let me get into FileZilla here, just so you can see. Put it back here on the stage and go to Site Manager, and I shall connect to myself, to my account on the server. I'll go to public HTML, and this is just going to be a temp upload. So I'll go to temp, and you can see here I've got Dungeon Cleanup Video Tutorial. I'm going to just drag that folder up to my server. And I should note that I'm violating every rule I've told you guys because I have spaces in here in capital letters. Terrible idea, but for our purposes right now, it's okay. But just remember, don't keep spaces in capital letters in your folder names if you can help it. So Dungeon Cleanup Video Tutorial has now been uploaded. Let me go to trinitycommdepartment.com/adelwich temp, and you can see here Dungeon Cleanup Video Tutorial, and ta-da! We have our super exciting game that we just created. We've published it. It is now available on the web for anybody in the world to play if they would like to play this fascinating, riveting game, which is sure to become Game of the Year. Now, notice here, though, this is why I'm telling you, don't use spaces and capital letters. Look at all those %20s. That's from where all the spaces were located. Okay, so getting back into Construct, this is Construct. It is a ton of fun to play with. Your module today is going to ask you to add some other things in to experiment with the monsters, to experiment with crates, and to try to just make this more of a game. But remember, the key word is experiment. I know everybody is thrashed right now, and we all need a break. We're going to get one. But for now, just start playing around and having fun. The other thing I wanted to show you that's really, really important, let me get out of this for a second, is that we have on the start page all of these cool little examples. So if you click on beginners examples, you'll see examples of like, let me close that project bar and get over here. You'll see different things like 8-direction behavior, basic hierarchy, blend modes, bouncing balls, and all of these things. You could just like open any of these projects. If you're interested in knowing how to make something bounce, like a bouncing ball, you can click on Open Project, and it'll close your previous project and open up an example, and then you can test the example. And it shows you, oh, look, those objects have bouncing properties attached to them. And then it explains to you exactly how you should make it do that, whatever it's doing. So again, all that stuff is on the start page. Fantastic examples there you can play around with. Also game demos that you can play around with. I would wait a little bit maybe before you start doing that. But if you just want to throw yourself in, I know some people that's your learning style, go for it. Just plunge in. And don't be intimidated from playing around with intermediate examples or advanced examples. It's all a ton of fun. And let me know if you have questions. I realized that this was a pretty hasty and non-polished video. Just wanted to have something for you to refer back to if you're having a rough time as you're getting started with this, or if you're looking at this over the break. That's not really a break officially, but our little break. Okay, that's it. Take care.